Santosh, it is such a joy to connect with you today, and there are three reasons why I'm excited to curate this episode of Sunday Sips. The first of which, you are an absolute legend in medtech, spanning multiple technologies, startups, strategics, and you are clearly an SME in the AI spaces and how we can progress new solutions there. Second, you are an entrepreneur, which I identify with in your journey, and it's been amazing seeing the different risks you've progressed in order to build up new talent in our medtech industry through robotics and AI and through these intensive workshops. And the third, which I have on my phone, which is exciting, you are the first person ever who gave me feedback on Sunday Sips. So I'm just going to read your initial text, which was so encouraging to me as I've been stepping out and trying to curate these dialogues of big brain ideas in our industry. It's a great talk with Juthika on Sunday Sips. Extremely invaluable advice. You're doing a great service to the medtech ecosystem. Keep up the good work. And so many episodes later, and by so many I mean like five, four that I've done, it is such an encouragement to curate your big brain ideas and to give you the stage to share all of the depth of wisdom you have across engineering, across business, across entrepreneurship. We'll touch on family. So I'm really excited to connect with you today and bring our digital context together so that we could just glean and kind of sit under your wisdom. So, Santosh Iyer, you have a remarkable big brain, and it is a privilege to welcome you officially to the Sunday Sips podcast, where we curate these big brain ideas worth sipping on. So that's all I have. Let's get to work.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, hey, it's the pretentious engineer from the future. And I know you didn't ask, but I have listened to this conversation with Santosh far more times than I can count during the editing process. And you are in for a treat. Now, I know you're incredibly busy and selective with where you put your time. So, I want to share three quick reasons why I think this conversation is going to change your life, especially if you're passionate about medtech innovation, surgical robotics, AI, digital ecosystems, or even potentially building your own business down the road. First of which, Santosh is a legend in physical AI. He was working in surgical robotics before it was cool, and he shares this beautiful story where he had proximity to a robotics technology in a medical application very early in his journey that just changed the trajectory of his career towards surgical robotics, which is fantastic. Number two, he's worked on so many technologies across histosonics, intuitive ion, moon surgical, and right now he's directing systems engineering at Zimmer. And he has this great arc moving across engineering and then getting into the marketing, customer facing biz dev spaces. He actually pursued a business MBA at Harvard Business School. So he's a wizard in building businesses. And he just has a very humble yet strong executive presence. So there's lots of little examples he shares that I think are deeply applicable to you in your own leadership context. Number three, by the end of this episode, you will have a deeper understanding of the future of physical AI in medtech, what barriers exist to getting this technology adopted, different techniques we could leverage to actually progress the right innovation for the right clinicians in the right regions. And then also, he shares some of his own tips he's used to operationalize or scale and enjoy a business that he started in his own ventures and how he leverages AI agents in those spaces, which is a treat. And then at the end of this discussion, I will review Santosh's five big brain ideas. I've been taking notes throughout the editing process, and I wanted to summarize it so that these are five ideas you can carry with you into your context. So make sure that you hang on till the end. And I want to introduce a quick word from our sponsors of this episode of Sunday Sips. So you can sip on that. So, first of all, this episode of Sunday Sips is caffeinated by me. Now, I am a full time entrepreneur. I have been building my business for almost 2 years, and I put around 100 hours total into each episode of Sunday Sips across connecting with the speaker, pre production planning, shooting the episode, all the edits, and post edit campaigning. And the reason I do this is because it's a beautiful opportunity for me to curate these dialogues in medtech and highlight these wonderful innovators that are healing from the margins. And it also connects people with my business and services. So I've put 100 hours into this for you. If you have 15 minutes, this next step would be incredibly helpful for me because I receive a lot of DMs from different folks, and I just can't actually navigate all those discussions from people. So the best way that I can organize all this is I have a wait list. Let me find my magic button. There we go. So I have a big brain wait list. This has a 10-minute video that goes through a bit of my story, a bit of my capabilities, And even if you aren't necessarily a perfect fit for these capabilities, you knowing them is a huge help to me because I'm probably 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from a lead that's transformative for my business that I could provide massive value to. So if you could take the time to pause this, keep it open in a tab on your phone, and go to this waitlist and watch this video, that would be massive for me. And then next step is you can click on any of these Big Brain Waitlist buttons and they will take you to a series of 6 questions that helps me understand you better. This will also kick off an email sequence where I'll bring you through the last year of my entrepreneurial journey with 10 posts that'll help you take greater risks in your own journey to build the life you desire, living where you want, loving what you do, and being paid well for it. So I'd love if you can navigate this waitlist. And the second thing, which is kind of pressing or new, is I have the opportunity to do a keynote in Basel, Switzerland in March. And if you'd like to connect in person, this is the best way to connect with me right now. There's going to be incredible conversations around health tech, which is a combination of both pharma and medtech innovation. I love surgical robotics. I love the ideas of positioning localized pharmaceuticals via robotics into different spaces. So there's going to be some fun dialogue here. And if you go down to the speakers, there's an astronaut, there's Fauci, and if you click across a couple more, here comes my happy face right there. So I'll be there. Um, you can navigate this whole website just to learn more about the event and logistics if this is a good fit for you and members of your team. I do get affiliate commission if you decide to go, which is also helpful for my business. So please don't go to this ticket shop. There'll be a link in the bottom of this video. That's my affiliate link. It should say personal ticket shop from Joey Sasaki. And if you purchase your tickets there, I also get a commission, which is super cool. So anyway, that's all I have from me. And let's see what else we have from my main sponsors of today's episode. Hey, pretentious engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but this episode of Sunday Sips is caffeinated by Kinetic Vision. Throughout my decade-long career in surgical robotics, I've worked with many MedTech consultants, and without question, Kinetic Vision stands in a league of their own. They masterfully curate the art of science, accelerating innovation through advanced technology. Their capabilities, creativity, and candor have consistently made them my most trusted digital external innovation partner. We've collaborated across continents and time zones, tackling challenges and unconventional ideas and taking them from white paper to fully functional MVPs. Their contributions, from early concept generation to usability studies, test automations, digital twin creation, VR simulations, and beyond, have been pivotal in moving breakthrough ideas towards real world clinical use. My partnership with Kinetic Vision has been a decade in the making, and it's an honor to introduce you to their world class capabilities. If you're facing technical challenges beyond what you can do in house, I trust Kinetic Vision to help you find the path forward and empower you to innovate on behalf of global patients and the clinicians you serve. Finding the right partner to drive digital transformation within your organization and product pipeline is critical to the long term success of a medtech business. So check out the link in the description below to take the Digital External Innovation Readiness Assessment, which includes a waitlist for experiencing a discovery session with Kinetic Vision. It'll take you less time than it takes to finish your coffee or tea, and it'll provide you with greater clarity on if Kinetic Vision is right for you. Anyways, you could sip on that, and let's get back to Sunday Sips. So, I guess where would you like to start? Because we've already had 20 minutes before the recording, which is fun to chat. What, I guess, insights or ideas are you most interested in exploring? We could go through your backstory and how you got into medtech. We could talk through what you're working on right now with Zimmer Biomet and loosely because Stryker is listening and other folks. We could go through entrepreneurship. So, how would you like to progress the discussion?
Uh, I think logically, maybe start with background a little bit
Yeah.
because maybe it's a little unconventional and maybe explains why I'm here where I am. And then that'll allow us to kind of break into the entrepreneurship and CB and other pieces. So, yeah, so the background was
Oh my
So
gosh,
that's
that's
a
so
little bit more
beautiful.
about me.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
found like Biomet completely by accident. So I'm from
Mhm.
Chicago originally, and I went to the University of Illinois, and a lot of the recruiters are like Caterpillar as well as automotive.
Mhm.
So as a mechanical engineer, I went to career fairs thinking like I'm going to end up doing cars because that's all I can do, and I
Mhm.
found Johnson and Johnson completely like serendipitously. Like I knew about J&J,
Mhm.
I didn't know anything about Ethicon, and then that like unfolded an entire journey. So it's always
Mhm.
interesting how these little moments can just completely redirect the entire pathway of our
Mhm.
life because I ended up spending a decade there. So out of
Mhm.
biomedical and this vision for surgical robotics, where did you start? What was the first company you actually started
So
working
I
for
actually
as an engineer?
so yeah, so I actually started at Imris, which was in cold Winnipeg, Manitoba, in Canada, and then they moved down to Minneapolis. And actually, a lot of the Oris engineers now came from there. And the goal was to basically make an MR compatible microsurgical robot
Oh,
to do
cool.
brain surgery. So it'd be live imaging with MRI, providing global 3D live reconstruction, and essentially update kind of a 3D atlas of where you are. So it would essentially allow you to do navigated microsurgery in bore in the MRI. And so I was one of the lead systems engineers there, thinking through workflow, requirements, risk analysis. Work very closely with one of the product managers there, Eric Hines, who I now work with as well. And it was fantastic. So really got kind of my career started there, and then yeah, from there moved over to Vitronis in the Bay Area, which was doing autonomous ultrasound guided cardiac ablation for arrhythmias, and so they were, I think, later acquired by Oris, and some of their technology was absorbed in there. And then from there, I went to Intuitive, working on Ion,
I had no
on
idea
kind of
you
the
were at
soft.
Intuitive. I was going to ask about that.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
god.
yeah. So I
I
was
should
at
have done more
Intuitive.
research. Okay.
Oh no, no worries. Yeah, I was on the Ion team, and at that time, it was kind of my third stint in kind of a technical role, and I really wanted to. I think what I was missing was there was a lot of interesting development, but I'm really an extroverted kind of guy, and I like to talk to users and understand how my work actually impacts the end patient. So someone told me about product management and marketing, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess this is something I can do. But transitioning from like an engineering role to marketing is very hard,
It's so
especially if
messy.
you've been in. It's very, and there's no like official track to do it.
Nope.
So I literally went to this thing called product school on nights and weekends, where I basically used a I actually use Verb Surgical as my product to basically create kind of like a new feature set. Um, like what would digital surgery look like, and essentially what is now, I guess, a version of the My Intuitive app is what I had proposed, um, and that allowed me to kind of enter this kind of marketing realm, and I was very convinced that okay, this is where I want to go. And then yeah, I had some friends and family that said, "Hey, if you want to really go this way, it's going to be very hard to transition uh, on your own. You can do it, and there's a lot of people that have done it." But they're like, "I think you should apply for business school." And if you're in the Bay Area, and if you say you're applying to business school, it's like heresy because no one believes in an MBA there. But I kind of still did it because I felt like some of the foundational skills in finance and strategy would be good. So yeah, that's what I ended up doing. Is I was lucky enough to get in, and that was the kind of two transformative years of my life. Was then while I was doing the MBA, I actually consulted with Active, did a brief stint with J&J Innovation down in Texas. So I was doing a lot of these kind of consulting or student project gigs, and that's when I made my pivot into digital and AI. So prior to that, I was in surgical robotics. AI was just kind of coming up in the 2017, 2018, like post Jeff Hinton era, when deep learning 2012. That's when you saw autonomous vehicles and physical AI really start to take shape. It wasn't called that back then, but it
Yep.
was starting to take shape. And so I truly believe that that was the future. Um, and so everything I did pretty much post 2017 was very AI and digital focused. So while I was at Harvard and I was doing this kind of function pivot, um, I really believed in digital being the future. That's also, by the way, right before Harvard, is when I ran into Joe Urban. Um, One of the
Yep.
best happenstances of my life. At the time, he was running Petrera Medical, which is now Acuren, and he allowed me to be a quasi product manager to think about their AI offering and sepsis monitoring, predictive sepsis monitoring using urine analysis. And that was truly transformative because it was the first time I had someone who truly took a bet on me. And
Yep.
by the way, he didn't even know at the time that I was going to HBS. He truly gave me a bet because he saw my passion and my like hunger to, get in front of the customer. So without any formal product management experience, he kind of took a chance on me. And that really paid off because he won South by Southwest to help him kind of create his pitch deck. And obviously we've been very close since then. And I talk about kind of what it's like kind of working with him at Zimmer. But that was a pivotal point in my life because it taught me that you need people like this in your career who will take a bet on you. Going through the formal interview process and applying is not the way you get those breakthrough opportunities. So anyway, since then, I'm not going to kind of dive too much into after what happened after business school, but did a variety of stints in smaller companies, including Active, and then I'm actually back into the engineering side of things at Zimmer now. But what's interesting is I think with the marketing and kind of commercial background I got over the last what is it 8 years. Um, that's extremely useful as an R&D leader because when you're trying to get budget or buy-in or alignment, to be able to like present business cases and strategy from a marketing standpoint is extremely powerful. And so it's been really fun to collaborate cross-functionally with leaders, um, being able to speak their language, but obviously being able to advocate for R&D, which I would say in general is not something conventionally you would think an R&D leader should have. But I think a lot of the successful ones end up having those skill sets in some capacity, especially as they move up. So Zimmer's been it's been awesome so far.
Oh my gosh, there's so many threads. There's so many
Yeah,
pieces I want to pull, and you've covered too much ground,
yeah,
which is fine. This happens with a lot of my guests. So
yeah,
maybe to rewind a little bit back, to
yeah.
someone who's new into biomedical systems engineering in these
Hmm.
spaces, your career has kind of jumped across multiple movements in different disciplines. A lot when I joined Ethicon, a track's presented to you, right? You could progress down the technical path and become a better engineer. You could progress down the leadership path. Marketing's over here on the side. I ended up doing a hybrid role between commercial and R&D, which was epic in Japan. How do you encourage people to follow the track for a season, but then to start to find their own path? Because you found a way to break out and then build relationships and
Yeah,
have people take shots on you. How did you attract that? And you covered at least a decade worth of time in 2 minutes.
yeah.
How do you find kind of a patience in the waiting as you navigate kind of your next development jump and then eventually figure out where do you pivot and actively try to find those new spaces to move into?
It's a good question. So I wish I'd known this, over 10 years ago, but I think you really need to understand the skill sets that make you unique. Uh, and there Dharmesh Shah, who's the CTO at HubSpot, talks about this concept, the $1 trillion Venn diagram of success. He made it up on the spot as he was doing a podcast, and basically the idea is: do you have a complementary set of skills that, when combined together, make you one in a billion?
Mm.
So, he has a couple of examples there, and I can share the link after. But I wish I had known that because had I known that, what I would have started with is okay, what makes me unique? And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. It's just observational, right? Where do you add value where others cannot? And I think if you have that compass and you're true to like, this is who I am and this is what I want to be, then you're gonna find people in roles that celebrate that or that accentuate those skills. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's not going to be like a perfect fit, but often you could probably get two out of the three. And uh, what you usually do is round that out with other experiences, right? And some of those may not even be at work. And so for me, I figured I could get 2 out of the 3, and it was tough because especially in the traditional engineering pathway, for example, like talking to users but being very user facing is a part of the job, but unlike marketing, it's not the sole focus of the job. You still have to do a ton of development, and you have to be very technically savvy and be able to hold your own in discussions. So I was kind of caught in this in between in a way where I could not find the role that was perfect for me. And so a lot of it was trial and error, like trying to figure out what fit. The one common thread is with biomedical engineering, you are forced to think in systems levels. You're forced to connect horizontally, not vertically, like unlike mechie or software. And one of the first questions I got, by the way, when I did BME was, well, what does that even mean? What do you do? And I couldn't give a good answer because I was like, yeah, I kind of know a little bit of everything. I can kind of piece things together. But across the systems engineering disciplines, even some of the software work I did, uh, you know, marketing work I did, it was systems level thinking and being able to connect the dots. It's just at different scales. So at the systems level, it was across technical subsystems. At the marketing level, it was across different teams and kind of commercial and technical, right? And then if you kind of even zoom up further, right, some of the work I've done is also involving the business unit, involving external parties and entities. So the cool part is, for me, at least through the business school lens, I think learning how to be customer focused, no matter what you do, has been really cool because when you connect the pieces, it drives towards that at the end. Which tends to solve for the kind of commercial alignment, technical alignment, all of that, right? So, I guess to answer your question, my suggestion would be find your niche and be relentless about finding the people who value that and understand the roles that allow you to accentuate those skills and understand that it'll never be perfect and that's okay because eventually you're going to get to a point where you're going to be able to craft that role in the way you want and in the way whoever you work with wants as well. And I think that's when you're going to feel like work is play,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is what I truly feel like right now, by the way, at CB. And if anyone there's hearing, it truly is an awesome role, and I'm very happy to have landed in it.
Yeah, and can you unpack some of the imperfection in the career? So you talked about some of you'll never be able to get, all 3 out of 3 in a role potentially. So is it location? Like what are the sacrifices you've had to make to progress towards opportunities that are play or fun for you?
Yeah, so it's not so much location. For me, fortunately, like, I was in certain places where, like, I was in the Bay Area, so obviously I was able to find jobs that matched what I wanted. It was more about kind of job expectations in, like, doing what was needed versus, what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I'm a highly strategic cross-functional thinker, liking to talk to customers, users in certain kind of engineering disciplines, especially as you're junior. That's not what people want. What they
Yes.
need is someone who will do a task, do it within a certain timeline, and deliver. And for me, part of why I started that initially, even though it was painful, was I needed to get my technical chops and understand the complexities of product development. Like, you need to understand the effort involved in launching these things in a regulated, cross-functional, matrix-driven space. Even if you're in a startup or in a large company, this is true, right? And so for 5 years, it was painful, but I was basically an individual contributor, deeply technical roles. And I always used to see people around me who were better at me than that because they just loved it and they went deeper. But what was key is I knew how long to be in it, but I also knew when to stop and say, you know what, I've done this piece. Now I'm going to actually solve for something different. Um, and so moving up that kind of value chain, it was trying to get into marketing because I knew that to be strategic, you cannot be technical. You have to understand the business. And so that's why pivoting more to marketing type roles allowed me to understand the strategic part and with the MBA as well.
Yeah.
And then now when I connect those things together, it feels like very complementary and effortless. But I'll tell you, to get there, it is very non-linear and non-trivial.
Yeah.
So
No, it's beautiful. Like one of the things I believe in from an entrepreneurial perspective is you have to learn how to nurture like not caring about people or the path they would have you do, and being able to take a shot on yourself and transition towards different things and weave. So
Mhm.
you stepped out like and did Harvard Business School, which is great. I did a master's in global leadership through a seminary of all things just to branch out and broaden my skill set. What was it like to transition into that world and still have your identity as an engineer that you're always carrying with you, but also broadening out the different pieces that create that? I forgot what you said, that trillion dollar. I forgot the
Venn
whole.
diagram.
Yeah, the Venn diagram. Like as
Venn
you started,
diagram of
as
success.
you're building
Yeah.
your Venn diagram of success across vision, robotics, systems, and moving into Harvard Business School, how is that transition for you? What did you wrestle with prior to making that decision and then going for it? And what even from a context perspective led you towards that move as you're trying to get into the marketing commercial spaces?
Yeah, so I think put very simply, if you want to know how to hold your own in a boardroom with investors in a board meeting or the CEO, I think going to do an MBA at Harvard is the best preparation you can do because you're basically in a room of 90 people who are top of their game, who constantly challenge your assumptions, and your goal is to basically listen as much as possible and defend your ideas in a succinct way. And so, doing your homework, presenting your ideas succinctly, having a compelling business case was core to every single thing we did there. And so to me, that preparation was probably the best thing I could take away because uh, I don't think it necessarily changed my identity, but I think it gave me a new lens through which I could influence and impact. Um, and I think coming back, and by the way, it was very unconventional for people to kind of come from places like MedTech and stay in MedTech. A lot of these people wanted to go to consulting or
Mm,
private equity,
yep.
or even pivot to tech. And a lot of people did that because of pay and progression and lifestyle. So not a lot of people select to go back to a place like MedTech if they're given an opportunity to go to a place like Harvard. So, but for me, I think going back to my origin, like I was really passionate about this space and I still think about the $1 trillion Venn diagram. Like my specialty is still here. So if I were to have gone somewhere else, I don't think the competitive advantage I would have had would have been as significant because there's so many smart people in this world. There's always going to be someone smarter than you in a domain, guaranteed.
Yep. 100%.
So why would I take that risk, even though the short term gain would be potentially higher, right? On paper. So I was true to my thesis. I was like, you know what? I think there's more for me to do in medtech or what we now call tech med. And it just gave me a different lens. And I think honestly, it gave me a lot of the tools to communicate effectively to a business and executive audience, which I think since then has served me well. And by the way, has also allowed me to build influence outside of the traditional role within a company.
Beautiful. So, what was
Yeah.
the hardest part of that whole journey? Like the not
Hardest,
not the darkest day, but I'm sure Harvard's
yeah,
not easy. So,
yeah.
what was challenging
Well,
to integrate there?
yeah, so it's funny, right? In business school, they say, yeah, you're partying a ton, but really, the value is in connecting with your peers and building the network. But I think as an engineer, I think the hardest thing for me was accounting and finance. So that stressed me out because I never had a traditional kind of training there. But to me, it's like understanding engineering and physics if you're in a technical role. It's the language of business.
Yeah.
And so I do think putting extra effort to understand that really helped me get to a point where it'd be easy to build a business case. Which is, in my opinion, how you drive influence and change in corporate America, how you fundraise, how you get deals done in general. So that to me was single-handedly the hardest, but also most valuable hard skill I got from business school. And I think something like an MBA was important for me because I needed that focused, dedicated time away from work. Like I could have done an online course or something, but I think being immersed in it, in addition to all the things we talked about, really allowed me to practice that skill away from like work and all these other kind of pressures.
So you took a full 2-year gap basically to do Harvard Business School in
Yeah.
person. Oh, beautiful.
But I consulted with MedTech. So because I knew with digital there was a lot going on in that 2017, 2018, right? With Verb still kind of running hard and other players entering. So I wanted to really apply what I learned in business school into the real world. And a lot of it was around AI product development and monetization, data monetization. How do you monetize data? How do you commercialize AI products? Especially in hard domains like surgery. I mean, this is not cardiology or radiology, so it's different. There's no predicate. So a lot of it was kind of building the plane as you fly it because there was no precedent in the space.
Excellent. Shoot, we're at like another crossroads because we could either go entrepreneurship into Moonshot, which I'm curious about, but there's also AI and creating space to talk through kind of your passion in those spaces, what you've progressed at, and what you imagine. Do you have a preference? We'll hit both because I can't.
Uh,
I have to use the time to get both gleanings out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Why don't we do the AI piece just because I think it flows
Yeah,
well from the prior talk track, and then we can hit on the entrepreneurship piece because it's always one of those things where it's an itch for me where I've wanted to do something but I don't have the capital to start my own company or you know what I mean. So that might be something we can round out with like, hey,
yeah.
how did Moonshot come about out of nowhere, right?
Oh yeah, and you're going to get capital for your own company in the future. Like
Right,
you're on the path, right? You've worked within
right.
startups from a technical capacity. You have the business acumen. You've done your
Uh,
own ventures, and now I think, well, you're in Zimmer right now, which is large strategic. There's always an interest in unfolding of your career. So for
mhm.
someone who knows very little about AI, 'cause I've worked in machine learning as well. Could you just help us understand what's so different around generative AI versus what we know as like traditional neural network models? And then we can get into implications of medtech and why solutions can be developed, but why they're difficult to position from a regulatory perspective, as well as just reimbursement and providing real clinical value. So I'll let you kind of waddle across
Yeah,
that space as you feel led. Start with AI for
yeah.
idiots, and then you could go a little deep.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good question. I think it's a fair one. I feel like the tech industry does a great job of pushing tools as products, and it just frustrates me to no end because generative AI is just a tool, just like anything else, just like machine learning and kind of regression and lookup tables and if-then statements. Like to me, these are all just tools, and you just got to find the right application. I'll be completely honest. I'm not the generative AI expert. I'm not the AI technical expert who understands foundational LLM models or now vision language models and all the latest and greatest. From my perspective, it's very simple, right? Is what is the goal you're trying to solve? Um, and then from an AI standpoint, do you have the data you need to solve that problem? Do you understand the risks involved, which is not just necessarily regulatory, but also commercial, technical, financial? And how are you tracking your outcome? So, like, what are your metrics of success look like? And I would say, by the way, this is true for any technical product. It does not have to be AI. But where I think it really helps with AI specifically is it removes the noise layer from generative versus machine learning and focuses more on like the goal. And I think MedTech is actually really well suited to focus through that lens because we're very patient oriented, clinical use case oriented. So to answer your question about generative, I think, in my opinion, the use cases that have presented themselves so far would probably not be in the real time, acute, life critical type products, meaning in diabetes monitoring or autonomous robots doing surgery yet. Because by definition, these tools are not deterministic. So if you think about it from a regulatory standpoint, the biggest thing that scares the bejesus out of them is how do I know what the outputs are going to be? There is work that's being done to start to make these tools more deterministic, but my sense is today for things that are more about making workflows efficient, where the output doesn't really matter, but it's more about checking off certain boxes. Think about compliance or documentation or doing routine tasks where you're trying to interpret input and then try to logically automate a process or flow is probably where it's better because essentially it understands natural language and is able to kind of convert that into action, right? And so I think for the near term, a lot of this is going to be around that space. Or like, for example, if I were to think about it in a surgical robotic context, it could be, I don't know, getting a command from a user, and then using some sort of LLM to interpret, maybe navigating a UI or controlling a robot for a non-acute thing, maybe repositioning it, right? So imagine saying, I want to dock the robot, but I want to do it in some X position. Things like that. And there's going to be enough variation between people saying things, but the system can understand intent. And it's really about workflow, right? We're not telling the robot to cut. Um, so again, low acuity operational is where I think generative is going to play a role. And it would be foolish to not use it. I mean, let's be
Yeah.
honest. So shying away just because of regulatory is silly, but I think you've got to understand the right use cases. And those that do, I think, are getting a massive head start.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
love this space so much. One of my favorite questions to just kind of pull people in, not around med tech, but from aerospace. Like we're used to autopilot being able to land planes and fly planes. But the question I like to think about is could AI land a plane on the Hudson River? Like there are certain corner cases of really high risk or criticality where do you trust AI to navigate that corner case and interpret or make its own decision? When I was working on networks around harmonic, we have an ultrasonic technology and we want to predict within a certain confidence when tissue transection has been complete. We train these networks and they operate within a box. And then we have different risk profile on if it correctly or does not correctly indicate that that tissue is transected appropriately. And you have to go through all your FMEAs and manage it with open with generative networks. It becomes more complex of how far do you let software drive an outcome based on what it's sensing and thinking its way through. And we still have to prove through design verification that a system performs in an expected manner, or we know where the corner, like the tails of the distribution could lead and what the severity or harm is of that. So I do think in the future that we will start to see like greater risk taken as we have less hallucinations and it starts to
Yep.
perform in a more standard or expected way. But we don't want our surgical robotic systems to become a kill bot where it just drags the patient across the table because that's what it thinks makes sense. So you have to operate within different subsystem constraints.
Yeah. And I want to maybe throw in another element, which is pretty recent. This notion of a predetermined PCCP, predetermined
Mhm.
change control plan. It's the idea that you can update a model parameter without doing a letter to file or a 510K. That's going to become essential if models have to evolve over time
Mhm.
and truly maybe become personalized to the user or personalized to a procedure or personalized to whatever. Because there's going to be learning that occurs. And by the way, it's not going to be learning that applies to every single site or every single surgeon or every single patient. It may be specific.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a mechanism today in medtech to allow that. So what's cool about PCCP is your verification protocols, as long as it's within the boundaries of safety, however the model decides to evolve, as long as it fits that, that is where I think FDA has done a brilliant job in creating mechanisms like that to allow AI to kind of be more broadly adopted in our space, right? So I think even with generative, I think that's probably the direction in which it's probably going to fit.
Excellent. So
Yeah.
for orthopedics, I know you can't speak on what's in pipeline and fun things like that at Zimmer,
Mhm.
but it has been interesting seeing the pieces that are coming together with like Persona, where you have a smart implantable and you're having all this data that can lead to different clinical outcomes for patients. Could you walk us through a bit about what's happening in the orthopedic space? You also have Monogram, which is moving towards autonomous surgery. Like, give us a tour of what's going on in knee today without revealing too much of where it's going because you can't, which is messy. So I'll give you some space there.
Yeah. So the good news is I'm actually from the soft tissue side. So to all my orthopedics friends, if I sound a bit naive when I talk about this, please forgive me. But I think that's it's actually good because I'm kind of looking at this from a very different lens from where maybe the industry has traditionally looked at things. So coming from the soft tissue side, what have we wanted? We've wanted the ability to preoperatively plan, sense in a 3D setting where we are in the body, be able to make cuts that are fully aligned with outcomes. Right. That's fundamentally any interventional procedure, whether
Yeah.
it's a scalpel, whether it's a needle, whether it's an energy tool, whether it's a drill or saw, whatever. So what's cool about orthopedics coming into this is a lot of the building blocks are part of the workflow. Like it's not inconceivable that people take an X-ray prior to the procedure and then even use it to make decisions intraoperatively. In general surgery, that's not true. They still, I mean, they still don't routinely use it, and if they do, it's on an iPad on the side. So because the technical challenges are higher, right? It's all deformable. So what's cool about orthopedics is that end to end is a lot easier to validate, and it's ripe for data driven decision making, because fundamentally you're kind of like a car. You're trying to accomplish two things, right? With the knee, you're trying to drive alignment, which is how things track, and balancing, which is forces.
Mhm.
Fundamentally, from an engineering perspective, you're trying to optimize there, and you understand what your outcomes look like. Then it's very much a matter of, okay, well, what's the best way I get alignment and balancing, and what's the optimal solution for the patient? So the engineer in me thinks this is an optimization problem where the more data I have about the patient, and the more I can gather about their lifestyle, their mobility, the characteristics preoperatively, intraoperatively, if I have ways to be able to execute on that, and then if I'm able to collect the data at scale postoperatively, we should be able to get there, right? And so what I'm really excited about Zimmer is we actually have a lot of those tools. We've had those tools for many, many years. And right now it's just about piecing it together, right? And without naming competitors, a lot of other folks have really been focused on the intraoperative cutting and the intraoperative kind of robotic portion of this. But that's not what this is about. It's about getting the patient to their native pre arthritic state, which involves precision and consistency intraoperatively, but really more importantly involves data, and data that's actually optimized for them. So it's it's exciting because we are basically in the place where we are going to combine all those things together in a very meaningful way. And you've already seen some of that stuff with, for example, Rosa Optimize 1.5 that we just launched recently, and there's much more to come there. So, I can't talk about too much what's happening in the future, but philosophically, for me, that's where I think the company is moving, and I think everyone has already seen the building blocks there. Now it's just a matter of connecting them.
Yeah, and now that you're getting postoperative outcomes because you could track movement and things like that with an implantable, is that it allows you to have a more continuous end-to-end loop that you could build out from monitoring that data and changing how
Absolutely.
surgery is occurring, how implants are more
Yeah.
personalized for your patients, right?
Yep. Yep. And I think at the end of the day, when I think about all these technologies, ultimately it needs to the so what for the patient and the physician is, as I think, as we spoke about before, how does this help me restore my mobility to a pre-arthritic state? I want to feel good. Surgeon wants to feel confident that they're making the cuts intraoperatively that makes the patient feel good. So if none of these things help connect to that, it doesn't really matter, right? So the hard part is actually connecting all those things in a seamless way that allows the physician to make the right intervention for that patient, and allows the patient to feel confident that they're getting the most personalized solution.
Excellent. So maybe let's
Yeah,
I want to add to this AI discussion around business and real constraints that exist in R&D on what we do and don't do and why a lot of times we get stuck in iterative. So at least during my time with Johnson and Johnson, we started with handheld laparoscopic instruments, then started to progress into this large play with Otava across multiple acquisitions with Verb Surgical and Auris. And we're starting to move towards these digitally interconnected devices with the play in polyphonic as well. One of the challenges I've seen is within R&D pipeline, we often look at what we have and just figure out how to nudge it forward, and we could get stuck in, for instance, an intraoperative space was very culturally locked within Ethicon. I admire how Zimmer seems to be spanning the preoperative planning, intraoperative decision making, postoperative surveillance, and getting that whole loop. Where does AI connect across ecosystems, and how do we incentivize businesses to actually make larger plays there from a balance sheet perspective or from an acquisition perspective? It's
I
tricky
think
because we get stuck, right?
it's
We get stuck in just tweaking what we have instead of stepping back and looking blue ocean for a minute, because some of that also disrupts existing products within our portfolio is another challenge with it.
I I would say I think the simple answer is leadership, because I was originally thinking maybe competitive pressures, but if everyone's competing in the intraoperative space, that's not necessarily going to force you to innovate at the perioperative space.
Mhm.
Um, I think it takes leadership. I think it takes top down kind of visionary thinking, saying, you know what, we're going to bet here, And everyone can create the business case to argue for it or against it because it's the future. But I think unless that happens, change will not happen. And by the way, a big reason why I joined Zimmer is because of Ivan, Tornos, people like Joe and Sean, being able to really articulate a vision towards a digitally enabled perioperative solution to orthopedic care. And so that is, I think, and it sounds simplistic, but often with a lot of the cultural, strategic R&D decisions, it always goes back to leadership.
Yeah.
And good leadership can move a company the right way. And I don't care what size you are. Um, I just think you need people who are willing to kind of bet it all and take risks.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, everything I've seen on Ivan is fantastic. Like his digital presence is wild to just see how proximal he is to the clinicians he's trying to serve. And maybe we could talk culture for a minute too, because I know folks are looking at Zimmer, they're looking at all kinds of different companies to figure out what they move towards next. One thing Ivan shared was this idea of trying to recruit the three blues. I'll probably forget one of them, but he's like looking for folks that are blue collar, who have navigated some challenge or adversity in their career, folks that are blue chip and willing to make those large bets that you're just discussing. And then shoot, what was the last one? Oh, and like blue ocean, like really believing that we could build towards something greater. So how are you seeing that in just your day to day world, the people you're interacting with, what you're progressing without again revealing pipeline or anything fun? But is that something that has cascaded across the organization from a leadership perspective?
Oh, definitely. I mean, publicly, you saw the acquisition of Monogram. You see a lot of the kind of digital presence around what Ivano's doing. We've just launched Rosa Optimize 1.5, which is towards kind of these intelligent profiles that allow the surgeon to customize, the intervention for the patient. Um, so I think you mentioned the blue chip part is certainly there. I think with the blue collar, I do think like a lot of the folks who have traditionally been at Zimmer, uh, actually, I would say do fit that. And one of the things I was really proud of is a lot of the folks in Warsaw have been there for 20, 30 years.
Wow.
And to me, that's rare, extremely rare in the
Mhm.
medtech industry. And these people take pride in their work and they are like craftsmen, right? Like craftsmen, craftswomen. They are masters of their craft. They take pride in their work. Their kids have been part of ZB, they've been part of ZB. You don't find that these days. And a lot of that is I think because culturally that is rewarded. Um, and so I would say yes, high level, kind of the old and the new, the grit, uh, the future thinking is where everything comes together, and I think you need it all, right? I don't think you can be too tech forward, but have this like degree of arrogance. I think what I love about the blue collar notion is like a degree of humility.
Yeah.
You've gone through some adversity, so you have a chip on your shoulder and you have something to prove. And those people I will always bet on those people because they will probably work 10 times harder than anyone else because they have something to prove. So
Hey, pretentious engineer here. I know you didn't ask, but this week's episode of Sunday Sips is caffeinated by How to Start Up in MedTech, which is curated by the remarkable Steve Bell. Steve Bell has had his hands over tons of MedTech innovation over the last 30 plus years, including being the chief commercial officer of CMR Surgical, which is Europe's largest surgical robotics unicorn. If you're not aware of this company, they have progressed an incredible robotic surgical system called Versius. I had the opportunity to drive this system just a couple days ago in Chicago at the ACS Surgical Congress, and it is a remarkable, beautiful piece of technology to improve patient outcome. It has an incredibly low OR footprint, and you could just see the touches of his craftsmanship on this platform over the years. So, really excited to bring you into proximity with Steve. He's a returning guest on the podcast. So, here's an episode I did with him as well. But what I want to share with you is he has a course called How to Start Up in MedTech. And I took the course, it's 100 modules, and I actually recorded a video testimonial if you want to check out how it's changed my life. I recorded this in my Honda Odyssey, where I consumed most of this course. But if we just pop in for a minute, I'll show you one module and I'll share a special deal that Steve's extended to members of my community. So, first of all, if we hop right in, or sorry, how to build and run a startup in MedTech is what the course is called. And he's broken it down into multiple phases. If I scroll down a little bit, You have the early stages, Series A, Series B, Series C, and then all of these contain both video modules, but also like templates you can leverage, like PDF documents. So, one that I really enjoyed was called Greed and Fear, which we'll watch. But before we jump into this, I just want to let you know that there is a promo code. So if you decide to purchase this course and check it out and really immerse under his teaching and insight, if you use the promo code Big Brain 30, all capital letters, BIGBRAIN 30, all one word, you'll get 30% off of this course, which is an incredible deal. It's incredibly generous from Steve to both curate this for us, but also for you to be able to get it at that price. So I'd highly recommend it. I'll show you the first minute of this module that I love about what motivates large strategics to actually look at a potential acquisition, and then we'll hop right back into the Sunday Sips episode. So here you go. Enjoy.
I'm coming towards the end of what I wanted to give you information on for the Series C round. And maybe it's now a good time for the next two videos to talk a little bit about potential exit. It's never too early to think about an exit, but it's very rare that you'll get an exit in the Series C. But it can happen, but it's since 2008, that's become very, very rare. But what I want to talk about as we think towards strategics who may well be interested in you as a company is what are their motivators for why would they be interested in you? I mean, they've already got multi-billion-dollar businesses. Why do they care about you? My experience over the years, having been inside the big companies, having worked with the big companies and done exits, is companies tend to work from two emotions. There is fear and there is greed.
Beautiful. So, what is the chip on
Yeah.
your shoulder? If we could go into
Yeah.
those spaces, because I forgot if it was 2020, 2022, you took a jump into starting your own business to raise up talent in the MedTech community. So
Yeah.
I'd love to just explore. You even mentioned ahead of this call just some of the challenges, ruthless focus on commercial naturally and trying to get this business moving, but also all the uncertainty trying to find a product market fit that makes sense, and the days and months and potentially years of not seeing revenue, but still working towards it with passion and consistency. So where have we seen that in your world and in your life?
Yeah. So I think as I was graduating business school at the time with COVID, there was a lot of uncertainty around the job market, although there was a ton of money going into tech and I think at the time telehealth. For me, I knew at that point that I did not have the risk appetite to start a company like a startup. Um, because we were expecting kids and all of that, and so I didn't have the risk appetite to do that. I also knew I wanted a foot in medtech and the ability to either work in a corporation or a startup. So how could I potentially, like, I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, um but I obviously had these other constraints, and most people will say, well, don't do something entrepreneurial, that's just what you're stuck with. At the same time, fast forward, 22, 23, there was a lot of uncertainty in the funding market for large and small companies because of interest rates, and there was just not a lot of capital moving around. So what I wanted when I architected the business that I did was something where I had a unique advantage, something which did not take a ton of my time, and something that could operate autonomously. And you would think, well, if you put all those things together, isn't that like what people do in real estate or stock markets or Airbnb? And
Drop
sure,
shipping,
that's what they do. And
all the
drop
things
shipping,
people look at,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the problem with all those things is that anyone can do it. Barriers to entry are very low. And so, what's your competitive advantage? And by the way, if everyone could do it, then why isn't everyone super rich? And why isn't that the thing that everyone does? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, for me, going back to the $1 trillion Venn diagram, what I realized is I really liked educating and teaching people. I really learned through hands-on learning, and I love medtech. And so I wanted to blend all those things together. And when I was in grad school back in 2012, I'd actually prototyped a version of this where we essentially had essentially at that time, a Lego surgical robot for brain surgery. at the hospital for sick children in Toronto, and that was received extremely well. It was for high school kids, and when I was in business school, I was like, huh, I think there's something there that had legs. Why don't I start with that? And in business school, there's something called a Rock Summer Fellowship. I got $7,500 of seed funding, and I had my Lego Mindstorms kit from '04. And so with $7,500 and my Lego Mindstorms kit from '04, I basically conceived of this kind of hands-on educational curriculum that we could provide to kids. Um, but what was interesting is, given the constraints of what I had, I was like, this sounds like a hobby at this point. What actually makes this a business? And so I realized that I need a good brand because it needs to be
Yeah.
priced at a level where people respect the quality. I need distribution and delivery because, back in 2012, I actually taught these programs. And I was like, this is great as a grad student when you don't have any money. But like now, if I'm trying to get into MedTech and trying to like really grow there, how do I make this thing operate as an entrepreneurial venture? Because it cannot take my time. So I needed to find someone who could teach it. And then finally, I needed a way to iterate. And conveniently at the time, ChatGPT was coming about, and agentic AI was the perfect thing to help me iterate on curriculum, code, and even hardware, okay, with circuit boards and things like that. So basically, with those three ingredients, and by the way, the fourth thing, which is kind of not mentioned, is I wanted this to be a business of one, which is I did not want to hire anyone. I didn't want to have a big team because it just introduces a ton of complexity in terms of like payroll, managing complex conversations, so solo business. And with that, I started. And it's one of those things where for 3 years, from 2020 to 2023, it was pretty much still an idea, still an R&D. But then Harvard Medical School basically said, hey, I think we actually think there's something here. Why don't you pilot this in our summer program in 2023? So Harvard Med Science targets high school students. They had the distribution. They've been around for 15 years.
It's awesome.
They have a
You have the
really good
lead
name in
flow.
Boston. And I basically plugged in. I plugged into their system and I got the product market fit I needed. And what was nice is those students were very forgiving with the initial product because med science had such a good name, and those instructors were really able to help me make sure the product landed the right way. So I got a lot of help actually in even delivery. And fast forward to now, and I've basically been, it's the same recipe, right? So obviously I don't have the time to scale this business myself, so I need partners. So Mass Medic, for example, has been a great partner to take the same curriculum and offer it to industry. um, and so I think for me, the entrepreneurial bug has been solved this way because it allows me to like take another aspect of myself in that Venn diagram and monetize an aspect, give back to the community, training the next generation. And I would say it also makes me a sharp, I'd say, sales and commercial kind of thinker because, just for context, like this business is bootstrapped, right? For the most part, there's no venture funding or any of that. It operates pretty autonomously, um, pretty low stakes for me. And so, how does all of that come back to MedTech? And so for me, it's about relentless prioritization with projects, being very commercial focused, even at the earliest stages. Like you always have to think business case, even if you have a crazy idea, moonshot idea in the beginning. What is the business case and why will this sell? I just had a conversation with a colleague of mine, and I said, even if you want to go down a technical track, if you want the CEO to ever tap on your shoulder and come into the boardroom, do you know how you earn that right? Is if you make a technical contribution to their biggest blockbuster product.
Yeah.
So even if you're in the technical track, you need to tie what you're doing to commercial success. No one can escape it if you're in a company. So that is what I learned in something like a moonshot, which I bring every day to what I do now, right? So that I think makes me, I would say, a better thinker because I think from a different lens, right? For me, like budgets and kind of organizational structure, all of these things are things that are there, but when we cut through all that noise, I'm able to kind of see, okay, what's the end goal and what are the levers we can pull. And obviously, when you have more capital, more people in a larger organization, you're able to do a lot more with that. But that kind of frugal thinking, to your point about blue
Mhm.
collar, that frugal kind of bootstrap thinking is exactly what one needs because it prevents you from getting complacent and it allows you to do more with less. And specifically with AI, especially agentic AI, there's very little excuse these days to be efficient with what you have. Very little excuse,
Mhm.
especially in kind of knowledge-based work. I would say that the resource, like actually, I argue knowledge work is going through a deflation. So if that's the case, your dollar should be able to go farther, right? And that's actually what Moonshot has shown in a sandbox. But I would say is largely true for anything we do in MedTech and in companies today.
So if someone has this entrepreneurial itch, they're working in a strategic or in a career, I navigated everything the wrong way. Like, well, wrong ways relative, but I exited J&J after a decade-long career to continue life in Japan, pulled a 75K personal loan to give us some entrepreneurial runway, hit zero after 7 months in a foreign country with 4 kids, which is crazy. Doubled and tripled down back in the US after crash landing with the in-laws and started to get traction from a business perspective. That is the pain path that I have navigated. But for folks that want to start to dabble into building a business, particularly with something agentic, like how do you do that? Like how did you start figuring out which agents to get off the ground? um, Even if you want to share a bit of your tech stack, or because we all know of chat gpt, but some folks aren't aware of how you can actually have a virtual computer person like your own jarvis that's doing pieces of the business. Where have you implemented that in your business, and how would someone get started?
Yeah, so let me start with, as I said before, with AI. Before I focus on the agents, I
Yeah,
did
yeah.
not start the business around agents.
Yep.
The timing was convenient enough. What I was trying to solve for is something that can automate myself,
Hmm.
something that does not involve hiring people, something that allows my margins to be at a level where it's worth doing. And that's how I started with agents, right? Like I landed at agents because it solved those needs. And I always optimize around those needs. I don't care what the agent is, as long as it optimizes those needs. So, if for anyone who's looking to do something, like figure out what your goals are, especially if you have constraints with family or job, and you really want to, again, focus on the skills that you're good at, not what the world is telling you should do. And I would always say, in general, you want to add value to your community. If you are not, if you're not able to contribute unique value, that fundamentally tells you the business case of where your thing is going to land up. It needs to be something distinct that the market currently doesn't have, right? So start with that. Now getting the agentic stuff. For me, in order to really iterate on this product in with very low lift, I needed, for me, mostly technical tools. So technical tools and curriculum focused tools. So for technical tools, I use Codex a ton within Visual Studio. It's basically kind of free cursor, right?
Hmm.
To iterate on my code, because oftentimes there may be some bugs, or I need to like put in a new product capability like within minutes. Okay, within minutes. Um, because I don't. I mean, I basically don't have time for R&D for my current product, so I need something that's hyper efficient. And so Codex has been great to update the hardware, the firmware within the product, write some of our front end scripts to help kind of take some of the vision models for training and deploying it into a physical AI kind of interface. Codex is fantastic at doing that. um, Standard chat gpt has been great in a circuit board when I'm trying to connect like motor drivers. Like I use the vision tool to basically help me prototype my boards and figure out
Oh,
where should my
cool.
wires go. It's able to pull in schematics. So I basically have a free electrical engineer, a free, let's just say, software engineer, software slash controls engineer already now, right? And then the third is like a teacher agent, where again I use Claude often because I think it's better for writing to structure curriculum in a way that's digestible for kids or for industry. So with these tools, basically 99% of the time that I would use in R&D is gone.
Yeah.
And by the way, if I were to actually do this manually, there's no way this business could run autonomously. There's no way. Or I would need to hire someone, in which case it would destroy the business value, in which case like the economics would go away. So agents have basically made this margin positive and save me time, which is why I'm
Yeah.
saying if one knows how to use it, it's life changing, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, I don't have these complex automations. Like I'm not trying to orchestrate, inbound sales or marketing or any of that stuff yet. I know you can,
Yep.
but for me, these are the levers of the business that are the most time consuming and the most margin dilutive. So I focus my efforts only on that and I have a really good workflow. It's actually not optimal, um, but it works. And that's the beauty of these tools is everyone's very focused on perfection. But oftentimes you don't have to be perfect with these tools. You just have to get started.
It's amazing. And hey, it's the potential engineer from the future, farther in the future, and I want to share some quick actions you can take. Now, I know we're not at the end of this discussion yet, and we're going to circle right back into it, but I wanted to give you these action items early so that you can act on them in case you get busy near the end of this dialogue, which happens to us all. I get interrupted by my kids all the time, which is fine. I love them. So, number one, you can connect with Santosh on LinkedIn. I'll share all these links in the description of this video. I'd also suggest that you follow Moonshot, which I'll put a link to. And if you'd like to connect with me, I will be doing a keynote in Basel, Switzerland, March 3rd through the 5th. Really excited about this. I've been putting over 100 days worth of work into prepping for it. I'm discussing innovations from the margin. So if you feel like flying out, be happy to see you. And number three, if you'd like to connect with me, get to know a bit more about my business and what I'm building towards, or just be more aware of that so that you can connect other people into my ventures, you can navigate the Big Brain Waitlist. And I would encourage you to share it with a friend that you think would receive value from it as well. Number four, you can join the Sunday Sips waitlist if you'd like to be my next big brain guest. Or if you're feeling generous and thoughtful, you can navigate the waitlist and nominate a friend. We all know people that have amazing stories that need to be uncovered and shared in a larger context. And I'm sure you know who that person could be. So feel free to do that. Number five, if you would like to experience community, I've built two communities on a platform called Skool that I'm deeply passionate about, and they're both transformative for members. The first of which is the Big Brain Club. I'm up to over 250 members in this group, and this is a group that is focused on building the lives they desire, living where they want, loving what they do, and being paid well for it. I provide a common methodology to help people achieve that over the arc of their journey. And then the second one is joining Skool MedTech, which is a whole bunch of MedTech nerds all circled together around different clinical unmet needs, coming up with new technology ideas. And every month we do a research project as a community, and then we do a deep workshop on everything I know about colorectal cancer. Or this last session we did was on neurovascular robotics, which was fantastic. It's like a 2.5 hour webinar. And then finally, number six, you can check out Santos's second SIPS episode where I go through all the markers in my edits and bring up a tablet, pull up pictures and videos. And we're going to go deeper on the things I just didn't have time to talk about in this episode because I really wanted to curate his story. But if you want to nerd out with me, there'll be a link to that. And there'll also be a link to all the other episodes of Sunday Sips that I think could be deeply applicable to you. So that's all I got, friends. Let's jump right back in and you can sip on that. So you're integrating enjoying your own business while being full time at Zimmer, which is a high demand job with lots of travel and team and challenges and technologies. And you've discussed being ruthlessly focused as well. So, how do you know what to focus on so that you could maximize your time? I'm sure you're not someone who scrolls endlessly on TikTok or burns a ton of time on Netflix. It seems like you integrate being present as a father and progressing medtech innovation at a whole and keeping your business running with limited touch points. So, how does someone grow in the skill of understanding what's important?
Uh, I think to your point, it's about understanding where your priorities are. Um, and right now, for me, the priority is making a big dent in the orthopedic space through the tech med physical AI lens at Zimmer. And the second is family. And I would say a far third is something like a moonshot.
Yep.
And I only say that because I have the luxury of partners who are helping me scale it.
Yep.
So it's not that those things are not important to me. It's I've been able to trust people to help scale things that I cannot focus on now, but are strategically still valuable. And I think oftentimes in life, you're gonna need things like that. You're gonna need mechanisms like that to help you push things that you want to focus on, but you probably shouldn't be focusing on, so that you can hit your kind of objectives here and now. The other valuable advice I got is it's really hard to think over like a long time horizon in terms of where you want to be, what you want to do. But I think focusing on like a 3 year horizon is pretty reasonable. Like people have to say, where do you want to be? And I think 3 years is reasonable because it's not too short term, but it's also not too long term. Like you're allowed to be more uh, tactical with some of the things you want to do. And so for me, in these 3 years, what I told you is the focus. And that has been allowed me to ruthlessly prioritize and deliver the maximum value I can. And like I say, compared to 10 years ago, we have tools now that allow you to farm out things that probably shouldn't be taking your time. And with the radiologist example, right? AI plus radiologist is better than radiologist. It's the same thing with humans. There should be no excuse now to not improve your productivity or to do more if you really care about it. But you need to understand the mechanisms through which you can do it in a way that was not possible, I would say, even 5 years ago.
Mhm.
Before, you had to choose. In fact, it was so hard. You had to choose between work, between family, and between an entrepreneurial venture. Now you can maybe do two of the three, but not really super well, right? But if you have the tools in place, the mechanisms in place, it can work. And obviously, on a personal front as well, we have great support, right, from family, as well as we do have help. Like we do have childcare and stuff like that. Like you need those mechanisms in place if you are gonna have to scale certain things. And that's just the reality of where we are today, right? And I don't want to get into the political discussion of cost of living issues, but it's not getting easier. So there's a lot of constraints at play here.
Mhm. No, that's fantastic. And I have to apologize. I totally forgot. What is Moonshot? What do you do for people? Like, what is the value you've brought through this venture over the last 5 years, 4 years,
Yeah.
as you've operationalized it? So feel free to brag on Moonshot a bit and what you're doing.
Yeah, it's it's very aspirational. It's basically trying to provide hands-on learning at the intersection of, I'd say, healthcare, but more specifically medtech and AI. It's taking away the fluff and the noise, short form, immersive courses where students or industry people can get up and running. And my hope is that these skills are things that they can take back to their school projects, to their kind of academic or professional interests if you're a student, or if you're an industry person, take it back to your business and figure out how to incorporate that. And the lens through which I've been able to make the most impact today is computer vision, because that's my flavor of AI. Um, but I would say that we do touch on agentic and other kind of forms as well. The goal here is not to be obsessed with the tool, but to understand the framework. And the reason I specifically love computer vision is because it's very intuitive. So if I'm trying to detect an object on a screen, I know if the AI works because it either shows me the object detected or not. It's very intuitive. My 5-year-old daughter can understand computer vision from that lens, right? So that's why I love that flavor. And yeah, I think the hands-on piece has been the pretty big unlock with Moonshot, because the opposite of it's the opposite of doing a online course or a webinar, which we have all been privy to, and I don't know how much of that people have actually paid attention to and remembered. Probably very few, right? So that's specifically the need that it's solving. So I think I hope it's doing a great service to the healthcare and medtech community, and that's one of the things that honestly makes me happy. Is being able to influence and impact people's lives, and then elevating our field as a whole, because it can't just be one person. All of us need to be competent in this space.
Well, and the hands-on aspect is so valuable in learning these skills. And this is something I meant to share with you before the call as well. But when I read through what you're doing with Moonshot, of bringing these diverse teams together, whether it's corporate or students, and providing them these beautiful design challenges and the pieces to kind of innovate and have that blue ocean view of what they could build. For me, I waddled into robotics controls. Like, I was a design engineer. I was used to working on handheld tools. I was the 16th engineer in this weird robotics venture. And I was provided a robotic test bed with the first prototype of an undisclosed tool and told to bring it to life. But I had two great mentors alongside me that had been doing this for decades, Mark Overmeyer and Enzo Barbados. Shout out to them. They're fantastic. And they showed me how to start to bring these instruments to life. My code was garbage. But eventually, like, when you get these magic moments of things moving and taking all the signals and providing the motors to push the way you want them to deliver the right output from the end effector, it creates magic. And that was a huge spark for me. And that was over weeks and months touching it. So it's beautiful to see what you could do to accelerate someone's growth with those hands-on environments, with the right curriculum, the right guidance, the right instruments. Um, So I just trust that it's phenomenal. Like, I'd love to go to one in the
Yeah.
future or,
So,
judge things
can,
down the road. Yeah, you're good.
can I build on what you said? So
Of
what
course.
you just described, students in middle school with no coding background are able to achieve that within the span of an hour.
It's wild.
So there's code, call it garbage code.
Yeah.
They have no idea what it does, but we tell them you need to do a task with the robot. They have no idea how to do AI. They have no idea what the code does, but they intuitively understand physically what that system needs to do. And that's the key here. Because that intuition, fortunately, we've all learned as we've grown up. Toddlers have a very good understanding of the physical world. And that is the biggest advantage humans have with approaching these complex problems is it's pretty intuitive oftentimes. And what's been really magical with things like agents is the student is able to translate the intent into action because the agents know how to translate between their intent and the code and other tools that are available. And that has been the big
Amazing.
unlock here, which imagine having to do this about 10 years ago. You would need instructors like you
Mhm.
mentoring these kids on operating with these systems, understanding how to like deal with firmware and controls loops and all these
Yep.
things. It's all abstracted. They could take PhD level controls textbooks and understand how to do optimizations from that lens and tuning. Like a great ed kid can do that now with agents with a Lego surgical robot. Just think about think about the conceptual leaps that that enables. Now, probably not to the same degree. They probably can't ask the same questions. But they intuitively understand why that is so important from a first principles perspective.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through what is it, 20 years of schooling to understand that, and that has been the massive unlock. And then also with the industry people, same thing with AI. They don't need to learn the technicalities because they just get it. It just clicks, and they're like, "Oh yeah, now I know why the data is actually why we need to deal with the edge cases. Now I know why I need to annotate a certain way. I know why things like lighting is an issue in the case of imaging, right? But there's analogs in other with other data sets, but once you build that analog in your head, now like our brains are very good at mapping those to the use cases that we care about. So for me, again, I'm not a teacher,
Yep.
but I learned this way, and I learned a lot of what I did in MedTech through amazing technical and commercial experiences through hands-on learning, the way you did. And I truly believe if I could do engineering again, that is how I'd want to learn. It
Yeah.
would be through case-based learning, which we learned at Harvard as well, by the way. Everything is case-based. And you learn back to first principles through observation and through trial rather than the other way around. And we have the tools now to be able to fill in those blanks.
Well, it's so beautiful because they're taking that skill set with them, not just the AI, but the ability to look at a case and break it down and chat with AI to do the solution, to have intermediaries. Whereas I never had that. Like, I'm still figuring out where I implement AI within my workflow and what I do manually, and the more arduous approach to some aspects of honing a craft that I could be automating. So it's just incredible to see that this is a lasting skill you're imprinting both on youth, because who knows how far they'll take that, but also folks that are probably locked in how it's always been. And there's probably these mini
Yep.
breakthrough moments they have as you're bringing in, directors and executive leadership, as well as technologists to come in and just upskill in vision. That it's a wonder what they're going to be able to build with us in the future.
Yeah. And I'd like to say, like, in terms of like the kind of the medtech side of things, right? This ecosystem building is super important because one thing I have unfortunately come to the conclusion of is in medtech, the chances that you're going to hire someone from OpenAI or NVIDIA or Google to come work in one of your large companies is slim to none.
Yeah.
Just the economics of it don't work. Like you
Hmm.
cannot pay them any amount of money. Like you're not going to pay $1 million for an AI engineer. You just can't afford it. So how is it that one is supposed to integrate these breakthroughs, stay competitive, not be left behind, unlock the efficiencies that other industries are seeing? And I think the way you do it is you don't build the fundamental tools, you learn how to use it. And so I think at a fundamental level, I think our ecosystem, sort of like how everyone knows how to use, I mean, how does everyone know how to use the internet? It's not a negotiable. It's the same thing with AI. It's not a negotiable anymore. And I still feel like our current operating model in medtech still heavily rewards metal and plastic, but it's soon going to change. And I think the companies which unlock the efficiencies with AI to unlock new revenue and margin streams are going to be are going to win it all. And I think the people in those organizations are going to look very different from the people in the current organizations. And so I'm just trying to prime that pump because I think our industry desperately needs it. And from a venture perspective, for any investors listening, this is where the textile multiples will start to come, because it's a pretty defensible industry once you get through the regulatory and the customer B2B side of things, right, with enterprise sales. So it has actually those elements that enterprise sales does, that B2B does. But the problem is it's not efficient. The capital is not as efficient. And I think with AI, I think it's a way to make it probably at least 100x more efficient.
It's beautiful. So how are you raising up
Yeah.
your own team to be those future employees that you're discussing?
So, I mean, our team right now, the mandate to be kind of looking at tech across the full business. We will use all and every tool, and I can't obviously disclose
Oh,
exactly
you're
how
fine.
we're using
Yeah,
it,
you're good.
but I mean, it's just one of those things where if there's an excuse about, oh, I couldn't do XYZ task uh, because it took too long. Like, those things are not in our dictionary, so people use agents as they need to within the IT kind of confines. Um, and from my perspective, it's you just get your stuff done, and if you don't know how to use the tool, we'll train you.
Yeah.
And it's just it's just standard, it's just expected. Like, and so what I end up at least trying to do is pushing the team to do more than they can. And if the answer is I can't, well, have you tried using a tool that can help you? Right. And a lot of the work right now is, like, I'd say half of it is, kind of problem solving, abstract thinking, and the other stuff is look routine stuff. So there's some efficiency, and obviously you're going to hit a ceiling. But I think that as long as you can find creative ways to continue to automate the stuff that you don't that you shouldn't be doing yourself, it's good. The one challenge I will say is, and maybe we don't share this publicly, but in big companies, um, it's it's often hard to get AI tools like this adopted because of various security and IT policies.
Yeah.
Very hard. It's much easier in a startup.
Yeah.
So I will say, caveating that, by my team is doing what they can with the tools available, but I would argue that startups can probably unlock far more efficiencies, specifically with quality and regulatory.
Yeah.
Which I think what's his name, Scott Nelson, mentioned a third of startup funding is used for regulatory and clinical.
Mhm.
Like, that's absurd. It's absurd. And I'm sure another third, by the way, is in, like, kind of like routine engineering development, software development, V&V kind of work as well. I'm sure, like, that's a big part of it. These are all routine things.
Yeah.
So, like, when I talk about efficiency unlocks, like, that's where I think it's gonna really start to shine.
That's beautiful. So, Santosh, there's something I want to reframe or maybe correct you on. You've, throughout this podcast, said you're not a teacher and you're not an instructor. And I think you've demonstrated the complete opposite. I think you are very systemic in how you teach and raise up talent, both within your organization, for the youth, through different leaders that are experiencing this, through the content you create. I think it's part of your trillion Venn diagram. It's just a heart for helping people upskill so that they can go and progress technology that advances global healing. And it's quite beautiful. So I've really come to appreciate that about you during this discussion. And I think anyone's lucky to have you in their organization until you eventually build your own, which I can see that in the future as well. So it's really exciting and just a privilege to share
Thank you.
some space with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, yeah. And is there, because I know we're coming up a little bit on time, I think. Is there anything I haven't asked that you wish I had, or any other lingering thoughts that you'd like to pull on across any topics?
Maybe one might be, I think you kind of hit on this with Zimmer, but where do you see things going in the future? Because I don't think the future is necessarily going to be agentic. I think agents will be a part of it, but where do you see AI in the future? Not agentic, but like AI in general shaping MedTech.
Mm.
Um,
Oh yeah, because
like
you,
where?
yeah, because you mentioned this on your video with Joe Mullins that I forgot about, but this idea that when you start asking like larger companies what their strategy is for AI, it's always going towards the CTO. The CTO is trying to
Yeah,
progress tech, and the AI could be a piece of a product solution. But are you
right.
discussing a little bit farther, like where we, like how are we holistically rolling AI into everything? Like it's the dirt or the soil that you talked about that we build
Or
from. What are you thinking?
that that could that could be one lens. I think the other lens is the physical AI notion,
Oh, okay. Yep.
which I think is much more tied to your bread and butter of surgical robotics.
Mm.
I wanted to actually tailor that more to physical AI because I think you've talked with Steve Bell and others
Yeah.
on the surgical robotics side. So maybe I'll touch on the physical AI side because I think that what's cool is the fact that that category now. So we've heard about MedTech. Then there's this concept of tech med.
Yep.
NVIDIA is pushing physical AI. I think these are all nuances of the same thing. Um, I think with physical AI as a category, I would argue every medical device should be a physical AI device.
Yes.
And why do I
100%.
say that? Because it sort of goes back to soul of medtech. AI should not just be a feature; it should just be part of the fabric, right? And I think from other spaces, from a technology standpoint, now I'm not talking from a business standpoint, but from a technology standpoint, what's been cool about things like robotics, especially outside of medical, is the idea of training and validating simulation and then deploying the physical world. The ability to synthetically generate data in simulation, solve the edge cases there, and deploy in the physical world. For a long time, the gap in healthcare has been, well, we don't have the fidelity that we need in simulation to necessarily capture the edge cases that we want.
Mm.
And I will say from my recent SRS visit, um, uh, was it this year? Yeah, this year. In addition to some of the things that companies like NVIDIA are doing, that assumption is rapidly changing.
Mhm.
And we are probably at the beginning of a humongous inflection point where I think the simulation to real pipeline is just going to be standard for how medical devices are built and deployed in general.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be bold there because it's done in every other industry. It's done in energy. It's done in autonomous vehicles. Siemens does a ton with digital twins, right? So that to me is the big bet here, and I am really excited about that future because I think when it comes back to talent, like the kind of caliber of people that are going to be able to do that are probably not going to come from the healthcare industry, or if they are, it's probably going to be the robotics people
Yeah.
that are going to be able to take those roles because that's part of their fabric in terms of how they do design validation. Um, so I'm excited for how MedTech evolves, and I think a dream organization would be one that has that in their fabric, in their soil per se, and is able to unlock speed to market, capital efficiency, and I would even argue sales because and the sales leap might be a little hard to connect, but here's where sales matters. Imagine a world where you could actually validate some of this stuff with your customers, right? So my point is like all these things can be solved from this framework. And companies like NVIDIA and others are setting the groundwork for that, right? Now it's a matter of how do you execute
Mhm.
and truly execute from the base layer, not like as an add-on. And so again, I think the likelihood of startups doing this is probably larger, though I do think larger strategics, if they're smart enough, can try to build this into one of their existing products or one of their BUs to try to kind of incubate that kind of future model.
Well, yeah, and
So
the strategics will get run over. Like they'll get disrupted if they can't adapt into these
yeah,
spaces.
yeah,
They're just
yeah,
counting time, right,
yep,
in order to
yep.
persist where they're at.
Yeah.
Like,
But it's ripe for disruption. And I'm like very excited about that because all the
yeah.
tech companies are doing all the heavy lifting.
Hmm.
So
Well, I can't tell you how. I think I tried to calculate earlier. At least like almost 10,000 hours worth of tissue testing, in my personal experience of just being in the lab. It's part of
mhm,
the keynote I'm working on. Is the amount of tissue we test in order to validate the technology or verify the technologies we're developing, particularly with like ultrasonic devices or RF.
mhm.
We don't have a lot of ways of simulating that tissue, but we haven't prioritized it strategically to the extent that we could with today's existing technology, as well as just how many design test build cycles we go through from a hardware perspective versus other industries like, you know, airplanes. You can't really build test engines as many times as we can with a handheld device or a device that sticks onto a robot. But when you get into larger pieces of capital, you don't have that luxury yet. Within medtech, we often get into the constraint of like, let's just kick off 120 devices, run it through a mock DV, see where we're at, then iterate and do it. And it's way slower than doing a lot of this with digital twins. So I think the
Hmm.
companies that can adapt towards that systemically are going to do very well.
Yep. Yep. And so when I think about what tech med actually means within this lens, like if I think about the core like DNA of that, like we talked about data, I've heard about data rivers and data streams and the business side, but from a technology perspective, this is what I believe is infrastructurally needed. Um, is simulation and deployment. It just is just part of the fabric. Like no element is left untouched. And that's the only way you're going to do it, because if the moment you fall in the trap of I'm going to try this in an animal model or I'm going to do this on a benchtop, you are then limited by the inefficiencies of the current model, right? It's probably
Mhm.
going to be a hybrid for sure.
Yeah.
But first of all, if you validate an animal model, especially with AI, that's useless, because if you're training for a human, the data is on human data.
Mhm.
So that by definition is dead on arrival,
Yeah.
right? So that model doesn't work for AI, by the way, FYI. For a manual laparoscopic instrument, it may work, but it will not work for AI. So like the simulation to deploy like real framework I'm describing is not a nice to have. It may become a must have,
Mhm.
especially for digitally focused businesses.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Santosh,
Mhm.
do you have one lingering big brain idea that you want folks to sip on as they reflect on this conversation? I'll listen to this conversation between 10 and 15 times during the editing process because I'm still very manual
Yeah.
in how I do this. But
Nah.
what would you leave for the audience today?
Yeah, so I'd say the big idea is bet on yourself. Find the unique set of skills that make you unique in the world. Um, and don't feel scared to take risks on that belief. Because for me, I've often found that betting on myself is often paid 1,000 times more than necessarily listening to one person or another person's advice on what I should be doing. Because at the end of the day, you trust your gut and your intuition. And at least my feeling is, even in the short run, if it may be painful, I think you're going to be rewarded in the long run. So
It's beautiful. And the only thing I would add to that with betting on yourself is create a timeline associated with it. Create this sense of urgency to bet on yourself now because folks will sit in the waiting for weeks, months, and years. Start actively doing something right now with that bet, whatever you figured out. Let us know in the comments and we'll figure it out and push you forward on it. So, Santos, thank you so much for the time and appreciate you.
thank you.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, friends, you have made it to the end of this remarkable conversation with Santosh Iyer, and I want to share his 5 big brain ideas that you've been waiting on. This is as I've gone through the conversation over and over and over again through the editing process. I've tried to distill this down to 5 principles you can take with you. So the first one is one that he lifted from another CEO. I forgot his name actually during the discussion, but it's this concept of the $1 trillion Venn diagram. And it's the idea of what are the key attributes or skills you could really nurture and refine that overlap in such a way that give you this $1 trillion value that you take with you into a given context. So, for instance, this is him combining his Harvard Business School engineering expertise and still overlapping or staying in the medtech context. For me, this is my proximity to clinicians, the systemic engineering skill set with my ability to do charismatic storytelling and content creation, like finding where those pieces can overlap together and locking in or zeroing in on that and niching into it actually unleashes massive value to different organizations, clients, as well as yourself if that's reciprocated. So, $1 trillion Venn diagram, that was a fantastic takeaway. Number 2, recognize the cost and ROI of path breaking. One of the biggest encouragements I received out of sharing space with Santosh, both before the conversation as well as when we recorded it, is like myself, he has jumped across disciplines and has found these uncommon pathways. When I first started working at Johnson and Johnson, I came in as a design engineer. There's a pathway of you engineer. You work your way up from like associate to what is it, senior, principal, staff, there's some hierarchy. And then you could take the jump into a project director and then a director of a franchise and then VP. And then like you just climb up that. And as I continued to become more and more proximal to clinicians and had the opportunity to direct innovation in Japan, I loved the commercial marketing side, but I'm formally credentialed in the engineering side. And moving between paths, there's not a very clear roadmap. And even after my exit into all in entrepreneurship, that's busted all kinds of paths in my life. And there's huge costs to taking those bets on yourself, but also finding familiar friends that are able to invest in you and take a chance on you. He had that through, oh shoot, what's his name? Shoot, Joe Urban was one of those individuals in his life that he shared. And you get to this point where you get the return on investment if you continue to bet on yourself and break or move across paths. So that's fantastic. Number three, creating opportunities where work is play. And I think the emphasis is on creating the opportunity, attracting the opportunity, being valuable enough in a given context, but also in a wider audience so that you start to get shoulder taps into different spaces and areas of interest so that it is just a delight. Like you can tell during the dialogue, he genuinely loves what's going on at Zimmer and what him and his team are progressing and the healing that's coming from that. There's a play to it. There's a levity that he carries with him in these spaces. And that's something that can be created or crafted with intentional career pivots and intentional networking and also providing value to your industry opens up those doors for the fun jobs. It doesn't just happen naturally by the path you're on. So that's number three. Number four, this is a very broad one, but radically reframing AI and how we can leverage it. One of the lines he shared about leading his team at Zimmer was really interesting, where they can no longer use the excuse of like, we don't have time to blah. Like, that's just an indication they're not using the right AI tools the right way to create that time. So there's this constant reframing on the way we've always done things versus how we can leverage technology and the way it exists today to augment what we're able to do. The whole way that he's built Moonshot out, leveraging AI to help with physical prototyping of circuit boards, of writing curriculum so it's accessible to a youth as opposed to whatever he would write to like an adult from a curriculum perspective. All these little pieces he's leveraged and built have really been a product of him asking the right question, like, how can I use the tools available in a different way instead of just doing it myself? Like for me, one of my barriers, and this is me being transparent, I put a ton of time into these episodes. I put like 100+ hours into pre-production planning, connecting with the speaker, making sure I got the right talk tracks written out, recording the episode, cutting the episode, editing it, putting it out, scaling it, like shooting multiple pieces. There's lots of areas where I could bring AI tools to augment the flow, but in some ways there's a craft that I do enjoy in these spaces. And I think it's an area of figuring out how do you bring these tools alongside the craftsmanship you might carry in a given vocation. And that's what's going to allow you to potentially push forward. So I don't use any AI with my writing, with my content creation. I do use it for certain tedious tasks, but being in proximity of Santosh, it is infectious. So I'm definitely thinking of how I use it in the future. And then number five, this one was really cool. And this was lifted from Ivan, who's the CEO of Zimmer. But our discussion around Zimmer's three blues was really curious to me. So basically, these three blues, just to reiterate them, are Zimmer's looking for folks who are blue collar, which means they've navigated some adversity or some setbacks in their journey. They are blue chip. They're trying to find people that are willing to take big bets that are kind of challenging the status quo. And then they're blue ocean. They really have an open perspective on what they can go after or take down next, innovating kind of on this white paper. And I asked, Santosh, I was pushing, I was like, culturally, like, is that really true? Or is that just like CEO talk? And it's like, no, it's very real. Like, there's people that have been here for 20+ years and their family's been here. And there's something really interesting happening in Warsaw. So when I think about the companies that I'll eventually build in the future or eventually circling back into larger strategics or startups, I'm always thinking about culture and the kind of culture I want to create. And I like those three blues. I can't steal it because it's it's what Ivan's pulled together. But I do want to find people that are blue collar that have navigated adversity to give folks a shot who haven't had a shot. The team members that I've brought up in my own ventures for my community run business, like all of them, the majority of them are from Amazon. They've navigated various hardship or adversity. And I thought about the things I've done to make money in that context. I was like, oh, I could teach someone how to do this. So it's like bringing up people that are blue collar and have navigated challenges. I really have a heart for that, even though I come from a highly credentialed background. I have empathy in those spaces after working third shift for the last 8 months. And then the blue chip taking big bets, like how do you create a culture that encourages people to fail? Because you will fail when you take bets like that, and you will also win big. And I think being able to create the psychological safety and put the money and the values behind that, that requires true leadership. And then blue ocean, like being willing to have people bring ideas to the table that are so wide and so big, and to still go after it and to take a shot on those new spaces and domains you can take. It's super curious. So I'm going to be stealing pieces of this for sure. But anyway, friends, thank you so much for taking the time to watch Sunday Sips. I put my heart into these episodes, and it's amazing, elevating beautiful big brain ideas such as Santosh's. Deeply appreciate you, friends. Naturally, you can sip on that and keep changing the world.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm completely humbled, and I'm pleased to be here. And I support people who deserve supporting, and I think you deserve supporting. And you work hard, and that is one of the tenets that I've had for my entire career, which is work with people who want to really put the work in. So I appreciate what you do.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for the time and all the wisdom and just your joy and passion for these patients that you're advocating for. I'm really excited to see where Vessel moves next in the years to come. I'll be following you on LinkedIn naturally. And just again, I commend you for all the work you've done for the last years to actually see this close to market. And I trust that it's going to be a massive success and help a lot of people. So appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much for your time and for having me on. It was a really amazing experience. So super glad to be here and thank you very much.
Humbled and touche, by the way. Like, I love everything you said about me, but I think it is me who is watching you in awe of everything you have built, that you are creating, the spaces that you're creating, how you're amplifying unique voices that are not in the spaces you have been in professionally. It's been a joy to watch. When I talk about you to my friends and peers, it's like, you know what Joe did today? You know what video? You know what content? You know what he dared to share and talk about? So I talk about you in a very loving, nurturing, almost motherly way because I'm so proud to see what you're creating and building. So it's
My
my joy.
gosh, it's so humbling.
Thank you, Joe. And I just have to just speak about you again for a second before we end this, which is just
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed by your humility. I'm just so impressed by your ability to put your ego aside and listen and learn and really process what someone's saying to you. I think that's like a really rare gift. I'm so impressed by your intentionality, your thoughtfulness, and just your listening. You just have a listening for people that I think is so beautiful. And it's an honor to know you. You push me, you challenge me. I'm afraid of it. You sit with me in that. And I just can't wait to see where this continues to take you.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm humbled really like to that our path crossed in the last couple of months. You bring um, very positive and growth mindset to this industry with everything that you've been through. Let's say probably like 90% of the population would be just knocked down, and you just like keep coming. So you continue what you do, and obviously you do it well. So thank you for everything you do for our community and for the world.
Was it fun? Did I do okay? Everything
It
good?
was awesome. It was awesome. I loved it. Yeah, I think you've been one of the few that have actually captured the entirety of my career in a succinct conversation. So very rare.